Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project. Got to write an addition for our video channel. We took Huck to the local gas station where they have this nice puppy cleaning station inside where they got a little raised bathtub, and she got a bath yesterday and she's so happy and she's been a good girl. And she said, Dad, I'm going to come in and I'm going to supervise this production for you. And I'm not kidding you, she's like 2 shades whiter after a bath. She's a good girl. Oh yeah, that feels good, huh? And Pyrenees love to have their head scratched. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good girl. Yeah, it's a good girl. You gonna hang out with us, huh? You're a good girl. Yeah, that's a good girl. Okay, well, this is a missing person segment. Huck reviewed it and said, very compelling, Dad. Well, I try. You know, we get about 15 cases in every week from people, from you. And I'm indebted to that. Thank you. The vast majority we've already done and the videos are already up. So I'd encourage you to watch the 700 plus videos we've done. We've probably done the case that you're talking about. But many of the times we haven't. And it's hard sometimes to decide what to put in front of you. Because especially if you're a new villager, you're going to see a case that I'm going to put up and you're going to say, well, that's stupid. Why is he doing that? Now, I know the people out there that are committed, that have been here a few years, that watch every week. I know for a fact you know what's going on when I put a case in front of you, and you know I wouldn't put a case in front of you unless I thought it was worthy. And that's true. I care about you. I don't like to waste people's time. I don't like to put other cases up that others have done. And I apologize that you'll go to another channel and you'll see my cases there. But it's not because I'm watching other channels, because I don't watch anybody's channel. Really, I don't. I'm way too busy. What you'll find is that I'm one of the most impersonated people on YouTube. And people are stealing my cases all the time because they find it compelling. There were some of you who said that within a week of me starting the amnesia cases and the truckers cases, they were up on other channels. Yeah, it's because people don't have a brain. And they can't do research on their own, so what they do is they just watch me and put my cases up under their purview. Nothing I can do about it. So, this case today, one case. On its face, when I first started to look at it, didn't think much about it. It's a case you're not going to see online. Nobody else in my mind has ever done it. The reason being is that on its face, it looks so mundane. But when you start to get down to the nitty-gritty, you'll see why it's important. And I want to say right now, this man's name is Mark Stevens. He was 41 years old. He's a lot like me in that 100% committed to his family, his kids, loved hunting, loved fishing. That's me. He disappeared on November 30th, 2004, 20 years ago. He lived in a little city called Nesbit, Mississippi. He had a 5-year-old son, a 16-year-old daughter, and a wife named Sherry. He was an outdoorsman, and he was a smart guy. He was able to blend his love of the outdoors to his work. His primary job was as a surveyor, boundary lines. But he also owned a company called B&H Construction where he built things, homes, etc. Friends piped up during interviews and said that Mark was one of the best hunters they ever met. And he hunted for subsistence. If he killed the deer, the family ate the deer. Hunted rabbits, squirrels. And he loved bass fishing. And people said that he was a great fisherman as well. Well, on November 30th, just after 1 o'clock, he had purchased a used white Jeep Cherokee from an individual. And he was a half mile from his home when he got the vehicle stuck in the mud on Nesbitt Road, 30 yards east of Oak Hill Road. Now let me explain to you where Nesbitt is, just because it's important. This is northern Mississippi, Tennessee border, Memphis International Airport, Memphis, Tennessee, Mississippi River. There's Nesbitt. Very rural area. Not a lot by where this happened. Nesbitt isn't a big metropolis. This picture of Mark. Mark was 6 foot tall, well built, not an easy target. Very, very personable, easy to get along with, and like I stated before, a 100% total family man. Didn't do drugs, rarely ever drank alcohol, stayed healthy. Which, if you didn't know, that's an absolute profile hit on the victims I talk about. Well, he purchases the vehicle at 1 o'clock. At about 4:21, he used his cell phone to call 16-year-old daughter at his home, which was a half mile away from where he got this Jeep stuck. Yeah, just a half mile. At about 5:15, he was trying to get the Jeep out. People saw him at the vehicle alive. Mud was thick. He had one tire deep in the mud. At 6:30, another neighbor was driving by the Jeep, and there was nobody around, but saw it was stuck. Now, there was no mention about what he told the 16-year-old daughter, but the summation is that, hey, I'm stuck. I'm going to be late picking up your brother who's at daycare. Tell your mom, something along those lines. Well, at 8:30 that night, Mark had failed to pick up their child at daycare. Something he would never miss. And he hadn't come home. But remember, his vehicle is just a half mile from his home. So the wife calls the DeSoto County Sheriff's. Deputies arrive at their house and they start to take a missing person report. And about this time, the Sheriff's Department is getting calls about a Jeep stuck in the roadway half mile from the Stevens home. Well, the deputy at the residence starts to put two and two together and asks the wife, hey, did you guys own this Jeep? And she goes, yeah, my husband just bought that today. Well, the deputies take the report, they get out to the scene, and at about 11 o'clock, they find the Jeep. One wheel stuck deep in the mud. No chance it was getting out of there. And they start looking around with their flashlights, and they see one set of tracks coming out of the Jeep, leading up through the mud, across the road, and up a hill to a house that's under construction. Now, what's interesting about that was a house that Mark had been working on. So he goes up to the house, there's nobody there, nobody working, and in his muddy shoes, he comes back down the hill. As he's coming back down the hill, the sheriff said that the tracks just stopped. Oh, what? Tracks just stopped. There were no more tracks. Oh, what? That's right. Well, the sheriff was told by the wife and the family that there's no way Mark is lost. He hunted all this area. He was a surveyor. He never got lost on a surveying job. He had a natural inclination to know what the area was like, knew where north was all the time. So you can get that idea right out of your head. Oh, he's lost and he's wandering around and people don't know where he's at. No, that's not the case. So the DeSoto sheriffs have the location where the victim was last seen. Half-mile from his house, vehicle stuck in the mud. Well, now they're going to ask themselves, why didn't Mark just walk home? Yeah. I'm sure he was walking up to the house to see if there was anybody up there working and they could use his cell, and they could use a cell. Except the location where he was a dead cell zone. So he probably, I'm guessing, walked up there to call the daughter and then came back down. Well, on December 1st, the first day after the report of the missing, there was a full call out for the DeSoto search and rescue team. And they brought in planes, ground pounders, canines, covered the area. Found nothing. Plane flew almost all day, covered a wider and wider path out to 2 miles from the location. It was a very, very sobering day because they weren't finding Mark. They put a check on his credit cards, not being used. Cell phone, dead. Now, when they said that the area where the car was a dead cell phone area, that perked my ears up too. That's pretty odd these days. Not impossible, but I'd say odd. December 2nd, another full day search out by the DeSoto County Sheriffs. They keep pushing out farther and farther. Ground pounders walking shoulder to shoulder. They gridded out the area so they make sure that they get all the entire area. They get pushing out to, the first day was out to 1 mile, 2 miles. They kept pushing, but they're not finding anything. And none of this is making any sense to them because the family was family and friends absolutely adamant he wouldn't be lost. Okay. December 3rd, the last of 3 days of full search efforts. Family posted a $10,000 reward. A commander for the DeSoto County Sheriffs at the end of the 3rd day said, Mark's not in the area. He's not in this area. We covered it thoroughly. We don't know of any place else to search. We don't know where he might have went. Maybe he took a car out of the area. Maybe someone gave him a ride. But all of that doesn't make sense because he lives so close. And he had a daughter at home and he was supposed to pick up the other child at daycare. And knowing Mark's inclination as a family man, no, you don't let down your spouse like that, which is right. Well, searchers, sponsored and unsponsored searches went on for Mark all through the month of December. There was nothing. Nobody could figure this out. January 16th, 2005. 2 young people on ATVs are 350 yards north of Nesbitt Road, where they found the car. And they see a body in a small creek. They're on ATVs, they call the sheriff. The DeSoto sheriff comes out. The creek in this area can be as wide as 10 feet, and in the deepest pools, maybe 10 feet deep. In general, it's about 5 feet wide and a couple feet deep. Well, at a very small log jam, they find this body. They never stated what clothing was on the body. But the sheriff did say that this area had been walked and searched many times. They recover the body, and everyone's thinking it's Mark. Well, the next day, the coroner identifies him through fingerprints as Mark Stevens, deceased. Now at this point, I know you're thinking, well, Dave, this is like every other case. I mean, found in an area previously searched how many times? Found in a body of water. Kind of weird. Hold your taters. The day after Mark gets identified, the DeSoto County coroner, a man named Jeff Pounders, talked to the press after he spent the entire day walking the creek bank where Jeff was found. This is what he said. I could find no indicators where I could find no indicators where Mark Stevens entered the creek. Mark had no injuries to his head or that he was injured in any way entering the creek. I could find no injuries to him at all. The biggest one, there's no indication he struggled to get out of the creek. Cause of death, accidental drowning. I read that 3 times. Why? Because the coroner's transparency on Jeff's death is amazing. You never see this. He could find no indicators where Mark entered the water. Okay, then how did he enter the water? Well, short of saying he was dropped in, what else could he say? No indications he struggled to get out. So he hit the water and he just gave up life, sank to the bottom and drowned? That's an idiotic thing to believe. When people go in the water, they struggle for their life. One problem. Mark Stevens was an outdoorsman. He was a fisherman. He was in shape. He's not going to go to the bottom of the water and drown. He's going to fight for his life. He's going to get out. The majority of that creek was shallow enough he could have stood up in it. Death by accidental drowning. Not by heart attack. Not by stroke. So what in your mind would cause a body to go into the water alive and you not to struggle and you to show an indication of drowning? You know the answer. Let's go into this a little deeper. We're going to do a little fact review on Mark's case because I think it's important. Expert hunter, fisherman, expert at the outdoors, surveyor. He knows his way around the woods. This man is not a rookie. This man is a survivor. He disappears a half mile from his home. Canines don't pick up a scent trail, leaving his car and going 350 yards into the woods to that creek. First of all, what would be the reason he would go 350 yards into the woods and into the creek when all he had to do was walk down the road, take another road, and he's a half mile away from his house? What would cause him to do that? Nothing. Especially as muddy and gooey as it was with the weather. Remember, December 3rd, the DeSoto County Sheriff said, what? He's not in this area. Take that to the bank. I do believe what the sheriff said. Why? Because they had canines, cadaver dogs. So when a body goes in the water, it immediately starts to decompose once you're dead. And the body gives out decomposition bubbles. You and I can't smell them, but canines can smell them easily. And they can smell them miles away. So 350 yards away is where the command center was. It's where the canines started searching. It would have been an easy follow. But they weren't able to. Very odd. Now, 48 days after Mark disappears, he's found in a creek. And all during that time, there were searches off and on. People looking everywhere. Dogs in and out of the area. Yet nobody found or smelled anything. The DeSoto coroner was so intrigued by this case that he decides to go out and spend a day walking that creek bank, looking for something to give answers to his continuing problem with this case. Mark, no injuries to the head, no violence to the body, no indication that he attempted to extricate himself from the creek. Impossible. Impossible. Unless, now you answered this question earlier, unless the answer is what? A 3-letter drug? GHB. It's one of those drugs that none of the coroners test for. And that's a huge mistake. The coroner stated that it was accidental drowning with no indication of hypothermia. So he disappeared last day in November, early December, very cold, but no hypothermia. Which means he went into the water and drowned immediately. Mark fits that profile. A good man, smart, outdoorsman, healthy. He disappears on a roadway, but he finds the only creek within miles. And that's where he dies. No suspects. He's a family man. One thing, the coroner and these rural coroners never knew the magnitude of the matching cases to Mark Stevens. Hundreds of these cases. Now, I knew the coroner, Jeff Pounders, was concerned because coroners don't usually go out and walk riverbanks like that, creek banks. They just don't do it. If you fall into water, folks, you will pull yourself out. Again, no heart attack, no stroke. I'm extremely bothered by this case. I'm bothered because years ago, probably 6 years ago now, I was asked by another coroner in a very large jurisdiction if I'd speak at a coroner's convention. This coroner knew about me. We had met while Ben was playing ice hockey, actually. And they had said, Dave, you're onto something huge. And this person worked for a huge coroner's office. And they had stated that they knew something very, very odd is happening. They're scientists. They look for answers. This person said, we can't find answers here, Dave. But we know that something unusual is happening. But we don't know what. But you need to educate the coroners out there about what's really happening, so that when they do autopsies, starting off number 1, they check for GHB. Number two, they say what was on the body when it was found. Clothing, shoes, etc. That's important. In Mark's case, they never released what he was wearing. Number three, what was on their feet? I talked about a case at a golf course in Minnesota one time when a young man disappeared. He was found after a driving rainstorm in a pond on a golf course. And the detective there made a notation in his report that said they pulled his body out of the pond and his socks were completely clean. Bingo. Impossible. Why? He disappeared during that driving rainstorm. To get from where he was to that pond, he had to walk through mud and dirt and grass and ground. The detective knew that. His thought was at the time is that this man must have been carried somehow. Except, you see, I know too much. This young man, his shoes and some of his personal things were scattered over people's backyards as though something was dropping it from above as they took him to this pond to drop him in. So is this important? Of course it is. I'll ask you, if you know a coroner, medical examiner, ask them if they know anything about this. Now, these are not opinions. I'm giving you straight facts. I'm giving you facts that may help towards solving this later on. There's probably tens of thousands of these cases over the entire world in the last 100 years. I've identified a couple hundred. But it was just merely by stumbling on them like I did Mark's case. And I'm not at all casting aspersions on DeSoto County Sheriffs or the medical examiner. Under the conditions they had, they did great. I don't think they missed the body, number one. I don't think it was there. Number two, I applaud, and I'm serious about this, I applaud Jeff Pounders for being transparent about his thoughts and putting it out there to the press, because I knew he was setting himself up to ridicule. But again, because we don't have a press that has many investigative journalists that are willing to push the sheriff and the coroner and to find out really what happened to some of these people, you can't expect a lot of investigative process to go checked. Yeah. So, my email address is canam, like Canadian American, canammissing@yahoo.com. If you know about a similar case like this, send it in to me. If you haven't, I encourage you to read Missing 411, A Sobering Coincidence. It's just about cases that are exactly like this. And our website, where you can get the books, the hats, etc. NA, like North America, NA Bigfoot Search at yahoo.com. And no, there's no relationship that I've ever made between Bigfoot research and missing persons research. Just happens to be a venue that I could put it out there and sell my stuff. And remember, I just released a new book, Missing 411 Washington. Well, now, if you thought that segment was boring, you are not alone. Huck has not moved. She's laying there like a good dog in her REM sleep. She was actually snoring a second ago. So, I appreciate you being here. Be nice. Remember, this is the kindness revolution. Smile at people. Do something friendly for anyone when you get the chance. I greatly appreciate you. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and leave some comments. Paulides out.